Ladies and gentlemen, for the next session, please welcome to the stage, Molly Wood.
Hi, everyone. That is the coolest my name has ever been said. That sounded so exciting. I'm Molly Wood. I work for Marketplace Business News. We're going to have a conversation for the next 17 minutes and 50 seconds. I've been warned that this time situation is very serious, about the startup and investor relationship. How many of you are startups or looking for funding in some way? Like everyone. About half of you. How many of you are an investor who would like to meet one of these nice people who raise their hands? Just the one, so leave her alone. Nope, two. So I'm looking forward to a really interesting conversation. Our two panelists are going to come out, give you a little background about themselves, and then we're going to dive right in. I am rushing because I want to get the most we can out of this session. So first up, Tracy DiNunzio, founder and CEO of Tradesy.
Hi, everybody. My name is Tracy DiNunzio. I'm the founder and CEO of Tradesy. We are the world's largest peer-to-peer marketplace for women's fashion. I started the company in 2012 at my kitchen table. Today we have over 100 employees. We've raised $85 million from investors like Kleiner Perkins, Richard Branson, and 500 startups. Happy to be here. Thank you.
All right, and our other panel, right, good job. Our other panelist, Tsai, founding partner of 500 startups. You're not going to do it? You're not going to stand and talk?
Stand? Okay.
Yes. No, you have to be right in the middle for pictures.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Tsai, founding partner at 500 Startups. 500 is a global venture capital fund based in Silicon Valley. We have a portfolio of over 2,000 investments across 60 different countries. And some of our more notable investments are companies like Credit Karma, Twilio, SendGrid, Tradesy, Canva, Grab, and more. And I'm happy to be here.
Great. Okay, now you can. We'll allow you to sit down. So I don't know if you saw the hands go up, but there are lots of startups in the audience, and so I think, based on some of the conversations we've had backstage, let's start by talking about, particularly at early stage, since that's kind of where you are, and then through the life cycle of your company. What are the expectations of the relationship between the investor and the startup? Christine, let's start with you.
So I think where 500 typically invests, we're usually investing early stage. So I guess in today's vernacular, that could be seed or pre-seed. We occasionally, our first investment is at Series A, but it's mostly that seed level. And in terms of at least our expectations as investors, we're not the type of investor that would be leading around or taking board seats. We may be the first check into a company, so that's maybe one difference, but not always. Sometimes we're investing alongside a bunch of other investors. So I guess the expectation for us is, we do try to be as helpful as we can throughout the life cycle of a company. But I think, because our entry point is quite early, once a company gets to say like a Tradesy level, we're frankly probably not that useful at that stage. But I think we see our role as to be there to help open doors and to coach and to help give that advice. But again, it's definitely no expectation of us kind of playing the lead role and lead investor type of role. I guess it's one way to put it.
And you're obviously well past that kind of early stage, but early on, did you need your investors to give you therapy?
I think as a founder or CEO, you always need everyone to give you therapy, but it's not a great idea to lean on your investors for that unless they're very long-time investors or you've established that kind of relationship with them over time. If you're starting out and you're looking for investors, or you've just brought on investors and you're trying to understand how to manage the relationship, I think there are a couple of things. One is that they're not your friend. Their mandate is to deliver a return on the investment they've made into your company. So you want to get advisors who can be kind of your friend and your Sherpa through the personal experience that is being a founder CEO. And you want to set really clear boundaries and guidelines with your investors about how you'll interact with them. And I think a few of the key things you want to do is be a good citizen and keep them updated on your KPIs very, very regularly, and leverage them for whatever it is that they're particularly good at. So if they have relationships with the next stage of investor that you're looking for, that's a great way to leverage your relationship with your investors. If they have expertise in a particular area, but you don't want to lean on them for everything, especially at the early stage. Your investors probably have very broad portfolios. There are a lot of founders and CEOs that need their attention, so you want to be selective about what you share with them and make sure you're utilizing them for whatever they're best at.
Like, what can put you off? I mean, if you're sort of going about, you've got 500 startups that you're invested in, and you have a company that might be, how dangerous is that, I guess, to sort of abuse that relationship? Would it actually put you off of a new company and would you not want to introduce them to later stage investors?
It's an interesting question, because I think when especially for us, we are investing early, but the majority of our investments are through the seed program, and they're in our office and working with us. We meet them every week for the course of the batch, it's like 3 to 4 months. And so, of course, we're going to see a lot more than typical investors would. So the nature of that is, a lot of these companies do lean on 500, or they do lean on whoever their kind of point of contact is when they're in our program, and we probably hear a lot or see a lot just from the sheer fact that we're in the same office. So in terms of whether it's a turnoff or not, I think we generally understand, having now on our 23rd batch of companies in the last 8 years, that it's never going to be pretty. So we're kind of used to seeing that. So for us, it might be a bit different, but I would tend to agree, like for certain investors, you don't want to lie, of course. I would never encourage that, but you also don't want to be like, money assigned in the bank, everything, docs are signed, money in the bank, and then you kind of open the closet of like, okay, here's the deal. Like, my co-founder is like on the verge of leaving. I mean, you maybe do that, but you just kind of want to not drain them too much. You do want to at least kind of show, like, yes, every business has challenges, but this is like the bigger vision. This is the path, and frankly, like, indirectly, this is how I'm going to, be a win for you in your portfolio.
Right.
But I think the only thing that I can think of that has really been a turnoff, it hasn't been the persistence, because I actually sometimes think that's a good sign if our founders are kind of making their investors work for them in a good way. I mean, to limits, like, they shouldn't be showing up at your house at 3 a.m. Like that's extreme. But the only thing that I could think of that was a turnoff of all of the companies that I've invested in is when the founders kind of didn't recognize the investors when it came time to an exit or something. So there's kind of some founders who are about to exit, and maybe it's not a great outcome, but they really thought, I really want to make sure my investors are whole at their own sacrifice. So there have been many times where the investors maybe got some return and the founders didn't get anything, and they really wanted to do right by their investors. And then I've seen some cases where founders could have, offered investors something, but they kind of opted to kind of take it for themselves, which it kind of rubs you the wrong way in some sense, where without going into the details, like I more on the positive side, I do appreciate founders who do recognize that investors are, certainly founders have it the hardest, but investors also are taking a risk by putting money into the company. And I think it's just being a responsible investment to consider that.
And certainly there is this trend towards sort of full service investment firms and funds that do offer a lot more. So with that in mind, kind of as you've gone from, sleeping on the couch to where you are now, how does that expectation curve start to change?
Yeah, so from your early investors, your expectations are going to look a lot different than what happens with your later stage investors. Most of you guys, if you're raising pre-seed or seed, you're going to have a lot of small investors. So they write $25,000 or $50,000 checks to, tens or hundreds or thousands of companies. And you've got to keep your expectations relatively low in terms of the value they can provide you, and be really selective what you utilize them for. as you move through your various stages of financings, you're going to get investors who become your board members, who become involved in your company on a weekly or monthly basis at the operational level, and then your expectations can shift. So just one example for us is that one of my board members from Kleiner Perkins is also an executive CEO coach to me, and he'll come and spend an afternoon in the office every 3 or 4 weeks and really get into helping me understand organizational development, which isn't a strength of mine because I haven't run a company before. So as you progress and your investors are more deeply invested in you, which means larger dollar amounts that they've put into your company and also a larger percent of their whole portfolio, they may be able to offer you more of their services, whatever that may mean. Whereas in the early stage, they can't. But one thing you should look for in the early stage, if you can, to add to your syndicate, like investors have portfolios and founders have syndicates, and so you want your syndicate of investors to have a variety of skills and value that they can contribute. You want to find investors like 500 Startups that have created services for their portfolio companies. So it's been a while, but what I remember from the early days with 500 Startups was that there were really useful founder forums that I could leverage as a resource if I needed to figure out what kind of a vendor or B2B service I needed, or needed advice about how to set up a third-party payroll services, things I just wouldn't have known. There was this incredible network and a platform for communication between the founders that was very useful. And a lot of early stage funds will now provide you with similar services, and they'll be really invaluable. So if you can, choose those investors that offer those services at the early stage.
And then obviously there's been a lot of conversation about sort of the role that investment can play in helping to guide a company in the right or wrong direction. So I'm thinking of culture, but I'm also thinking of Theranos. And I think, there's like a little bit of an evolution maybe in the set of expectations and the amount of governance, the amount of oversight, and the amount of culture setting that can or should happen. And so I'm wondering, Christine, if that's a conversation you're seeing in the investment community, like, do you need to have more science experts if you're going to invest in biotech, and or do you need to be talking to companies at that really early stage about their cultures?
Yeah, I think that especially given, in light of companies like Theranos or Uber or other companies, there's definitely a question, maybe more so in Silicon Valley, where this is more of the way that the pendulum is swung, where it's sort of in the founder's favor. And there are a lot of founders, especially if it's a very hot deal, that have much more leverage than the investors do. So they are able to command, they keep 10 of the 12 board seats, or they still control the board. In other businesses, or even outside of Silicon Valley, it's maybe you could go the other extreme, where the investors are much more merciless and take too much control, and then there's somewhere in between. So I think that the role of an investor may be more so when they're taking a bigger position or they're on the board. They're there to provide that kind of governance, and it's hard to make it a blanket statement. It really depends on how your board is structured, what sort of controls the investor has, what sort of controls the company or the CEO still retain. But I think that just at a high level, it is definitely, because these are private companies, that the governance really is that board. And obviously an investor plays a significant role, as does the CEO. And when it comes to, I think certainly when it comes to anything in the extreme of if there's something fraudulent or misrepresentation, then that's one thing. But what's maybe a little bit harder to govern is the culture aspect, because I can tell you, in these board meetings, a lot of the discussion is around the direction of the company. What is are we hitting targets, kind of the financial performance, strategic discussions. And Tracy can probably comment her experience with her board, but I'm assuming that topics that relate to culture and values that the company is practicing probably doesn't come up. Maybe it comes up more now in conversation, but it's a bit reactive in some sense. And I think the reason is most investors probably want to leave that to the company and not get in the way. And so they let the CEO make sure that it's up to them to be able to attract and retain good talent. And really a lot of that culture stuff is not going to be as visible to investors because their primary touch point with a company is going to be the CEO. It's not the employees per se, and that's usually where you really know how the culture is. Like if employees are happy, or if they're leaving in droves, or it's hard to hire talent, and so eventually it does come out, right? Even though it seems like it's hidden, like you'll see signs of it. Like if there's a lot of turnover, potentially one indicator is, if a company's all a certain type of person, and people who aren't that type of person feel not included. So it's, but I do think that it's something that investors ideally can also keep an eye on, and be a little bit more vigilant about it. And I think the one point to realize though is that, of course, Uber and Theranos are very big, spectacular headline, have created headlines, but in terms of most companies, it's hopefully not going to be to that level. And certainly I think for Tradesy, it's you kind of see it in their branding, you see it in their team, that it is a more diverse team. But it is probably those things like how, maybe not so much like what is the right, where is it kind of where to focus. It maybe is more on like what are the values that the company has and the CEO has, and hopefully that trickles into like who you hire in the team.
Yeah. Should they, do you think?
I mean, I think that as founder CEOs, the culture is our responsibility. The capital, so what your investors want to know is, what are you going to do? What are you going to build, and what result is it going to produce? And that should be their primary concern. What financial and business result will you produce? From what actions will you take? The culture is the how. How do you do it? Do you do it with honesty? Do you do it with integrity? Do you do it with mutual respect? Do you do it while caring about the diversity of your team? And those are squarely the job of the CEO and the founder and the founding team and the executive team, to decide what the how is and why it matters to the what and to the return you're going to deliver. In terms of Theranos and businesses like that, you also have to decide that you want to operate with integrity, because in a private company, even if you have great governance and regular board meetings, you do not have the controls that a public company has. And it's very easy. Theranos is like a spectacular example of this,
Sure.
But it's very easy for boards and investors to not be able to understand the mechanics of the business and the metrics. And there are plenty of companies that try to put on a sheen for their boards, and that never ends well. So my recommendation to you guys is that own your culture and your beliefs about what kind of culture is going to produce a great result, and find a way to be high integrity with your board and your investors all the time, even when the news is bad, because in the long run, that's what's going to create value for you, your relationships with your investors, and your relationship with your team, and the ultimate success of your business.
Yeah. And I
That's
would say one
perfect.
quick
Yeah.
point to add is culture.
You have like 20 seconds.
Culture starts from day one from the founders. You might not think it might not be as like documented, but that's really where it starts. So if you're thinking about culture, it starts right away.
Yeah. All right, perfect. Christine Tsai from 500 Startups, Tracy DiNunzio from Tradesy. Thanks.
Thank you.
Look at us. We are right on time.